The Verdict, a Sidebar production, hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crow & Dunlevy sponsors The Verdict. Also sponsored by Delta Dental, Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, and C.H. Guernsey & Company. Each week on The Verdict, we present an objective discussion of contemporary and legal issues, topical issues that will affect Oklahomans in their daily lives. The Verdict, a Sidebar production.
And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and I am joined, as always, by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. Kent, today a special guest.
A special guest, actually, for today and next week as well. We have Jim Bednar, who is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Indigent Defense System, joining us to talk about a subject that draws a lot of controversy and a lot of interest, depending upon the viewer's particular point of view, on the criminal law on the poor and the obligation of society to provide lawyers and a legal defense to people charged with crimes. And there's much to know about that. There's an awful lot we want to talk about on what the obligation might be to provide that defense and what kind of a defense does it have to be and how is it carried out here in Oklahoma. And I think we'll all be interested in what is the caseload that Jim Bednar's organization has to meet. We are going to have two shows on it. A show this week and a show next week, and I think it's going to be quite interesting and quite important, frankly, to the citizens.
Let's get started. Today we'll learn more about Oklahoma's criminal justice system and how it deals with the poor. You're watching The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
The Verdict is pleased to have as a sponsor C.H. Guernsey & Company, providing architectural and engineering services to clients throughout the U.S. and around the world.
American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leading at 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go. Wiggins in to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. But sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers is going to introduce our guest.
We are very pleased today to have Jim Bednar with us, James D. Bednar. Jim is a graduate of OU and OSU both. He has been in his past an assistant district attorney, an assistant U.S. attorney, and a district judge in Canadian County. But since 1977, Jim has been the executive director of the Oklahoma Indigent Defense System. And we're talking about criminal law and the poor. We thought we'd bring Jim on today and see what he can tell us about this. And Jim, we're really pleased to have you on The Verdict.
I'm really pleased to be here. I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, we have a graphic that I'd like to call up now and take a quick look at. It's the Oklahoma criminal justice system essential functions. And there are 5 listed there. We're going to just look at this for a second. Law enforcement, prosecution, judicial, defender, and corrections. We'll talk about each one individually. Thank you for the graphic. Let's start off with law enforcement, Jim. What do you mean by law enforcement being an essential function, or how does it fit?
Well, basically, law enforcement is involved in the they investigate the crime, the allegations of crime to see whether or not, in fact, they believe a crime's been committed. And they just gather the facts. It's a fact-finding process.
And those are who, the policemen?
Yes, it's primarily be police, sheriff's office, this type of individual who goes out, investigates, thinks there has been a crime committed. They go to the prosecution. Now, this could be this municipal prosecutor. It could be the district attorney's office. At times, they'd go to the attorney general's office if it dealt with Medicaid fraud or maybe abuse in nursing homes or these type of things. So depending on who the appropriate prosecutorial officer is, they go there and then they take a look at it to see whether or not they think that it warrants a charge being filed. And if it does, they file the charge. And then the judiciary gets an opportunity to then take a look to see whether or not they believe, in fact, a crime has been committed. And so that's pretty much the process we follow.
So you have really 3 checks early on. If the investigator doesn't think there's anything, it goes away.
That's correct.
If the investigator thinks there is, but the prosecutor doesn't agree, it goes away.
That's correct.
And then if it goes to the judicial, if the judge or jury doesn't think there's anything, it goes away. If they think there is, then there's perhaps a conviction.
Yes, that's correct. It's the criminal justice system in Oklahoma and in the country is predicated on the same checks and balance scheme that the government is predicated on.
Now that brings us to the defender.
Right.
Tell us how that functions here in Oklahoma.
Well, we have two ways. Either you go out and you hire a private attorney if you can afford one, and they represent you. And then we have also court-appointed attorneys, where we have a system in place now in Oklahoma since 1991 where if they can't afford an attorney, they file what we call a pauper's affidavit with the court showing why they can't afford an attorney. And then there's a judicial determination made whether or not they're entitled to a court-appointed attorney.
So if a person is charged with a crime and can't afford an attorney and makes an appropriate showing that they can't afford an attorney, then one will be appointed for them.
That's correct.
Now, in Oklahoma, just be general about it, about what percent of defendants, criminal defendants in Oklahoma are represented by private attorneys, and what privately employed attorneys, and what percent are represented by court appointed?
It's hard to go with an exact percent because there's kind of a variance in the numbers that are being kept. But the majority of them right now are being represented by court-appointed attorneys. So all I know is basically we presently at this time have about 38,000 active cases. We get 24,000 on an average new cases a year, and then we always have cases from prior years that carry over to the present year.
You mean your office represents 38,000?
That's correct. That's correct.
How many people work in your office?
Well, what we do, we have a system where we have about 160 people, about half of those are attorneys, but we go out and we contract with private counsel. In other words, the large majority of this work is done by private attorneys who are on a contract with the system in order to provide the legal services. So what we do, we bid these out each year, and we don't always go with the lowest bidder, because a lot of times you'll have a lot of young attorneys without experience that will they don't have the necessary experience that we have to have on the severe cases. And so, but we go out and primarily they agree, say, given a county, that for X number of dollars, they will handle all the felonies, misdemeanors, and traffic and juvenile cases within that county for that fiscal year. And
do they do it on a case-by-case basis or on just a total
on the
fee
county
basis?
contracts, we just do a contract. We keep good numbers, and we know basically how many cases we're going to have in that county, how many felonies, how many misdemeanors. We provide them with that information. Then based on that, we give them 3 years history. And based on that, then they bid, and then we come to an agreement as to what the price is going to be. And we get good bang for the buck. We average about $200 a case. That's including felonies. So we're not...
They defend a person for $200?
Yes.
All the way through a felony?
On an average, you bet.
Now that takes it through preliminary hearing and through trial?
Takes it through everything.
But not appeal?
Not appeals. That's correct.
Well, let me ask you this. And if you have an idea, it would be interesting. If not, that's fine. How many lawyers, either full-time on your staff or by contract, do you normally have working for you?
About 300.
Well, you're the largest law firm in the state.
Really, we are.
You're twice the size of any other law firm in the state.
I would think probably so, yes.
Well, then that requires a good bit of administration on your part of it.
That's correct.
And you do have some background educationally in that.
Yeah, I have a PhD that was focused on the management of large systems. It's coming in very handy right now.
More than your law degree.
And more than my law degree, you bet.
The other thing you talked about very briefly was corrections. That's the fifth or final function, and we generally understand, but what comments can you give us about that?
Well, basically, as we usually know it, it's where people are going to be incarcerated. They've been convicted of the crime and they're going to have to serve a certain sentence. Then they're committed to the custody of the state of Oklahoma, and we have the Department of Corrections in which these people are housed.
I know that recently there was an article that indicated that Oklahoma incarcerates more women per capita than any other state in the union, and is third, I guess, on the list on per capita on incarcerating men. Well, they don't get incarcerated unless they've gone through some kind of proceeding. That puts a terrific load on your office, does it not?
That's correct.
Why are we number one in women and number three in men?
Well, I think a lot of it is it's more of a philosophy. One of the issues that we're looking at right now is approximately 40% of the people who are incarcerated are there for drug-related offenses. Is this the best way to approach that issue, particularly for possession and that type of thing? And we need to make that decision. Senator Cal Hobson, who's going to be Senate Pro Tem this coming session, I saw a quote by him in the New York Times that said, we pride ourselves in Oklahoma being strong in law enforcement, but we've got more law enforcement than we can afford these days. And we're spending an inordinate amount of money here, and we're not, I think there's some real soul searching going on if it's being spent in the best possible manner.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. We'll be right back.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
We are C.H. Guernsey & Company. We provide engineering, architecture, and consulting services to clients across the nation and around the world. Our corporate headquarters are located in Oklahoma City, and we have branch offices across the country, including Tulsa. We have provided quality service to clients for nearly 75 years. At Guernsey, we believe in quality work and unconditional client satisfaction. To learn more about C.H. Guernsey & Company, log on to our website at chguernsey.com.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities. Parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, we're back on The Verdict. We're talking to Jim Bednar. He's the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Indigent Defense System. Kent, where are we now?
Well, Jim, you said something that caught my interest, in a lot of things that caught my interest, but one thing I want to go back to out of the first segment, and that is the necessity, or at least the attention being paid to a system that requires checks and balances. Is there a necessity in the criminal justice system for a check and balance approach, and if so, why?
Well, absolutely. The whole system of government that we have is predicated on checks and balances. We have the three branches of government. We have the separation of powers doctrine, that no branch can basically interfere or usurp the power of the other branch. And our founding fathers, the real genius, I think, of the system was they had basically a distrust of human nature. Lord Acton said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so they were, and then Thomas Hobbes, who developed the English system to a large extent philosophically, they adopted his position that you have to have these checks and balances, that no person should be given absolute power, or no branch of government absolute power. So the whole system set up that way. And if we don't have that in the criminal justice system, and we find, you find cases where the courts become too powerful. There was a strong movement that they're legislating now, or the prosecution becomes, you just can't help but have abuse because we're all human. And so what we need is parity. We need equality in the five functions to make it work properly, to really ensure justice occurs in the system.
Well, that includes, of course, the five functions. That includes the defender.
That's correct.
And that means that the accused is entitled to adequate representation in order to be a check or to keep in balance the system as well.
That's correct. And it isn't like the law enforcement or the prosecutors. There's some conspiracy to convict innocent people. They're over-convict, overcharge people. But they just have a point of view that, and the volume of those cases are so great that they get a particular point of view. It is imperative that the defendant have an equal opportunity to see if there are additional facts which may change everybody's perception of that case. And we find that happens a lot. We either get cases dropped or the nature of the charge changes when we have an opportunity to investigate it and to show that, well, what you said was basically correct, but that's not the full picture. And so it's very necessary that all the parties be able to play on a level field to make the system work, so that we really do get a crime that a punishment that fits the crime.
Let me ask you a question that you've, again, kind of alluded to. I know that you provide lawyers.
That's right.
But a lawyer is not necessarily an investigator, and is not necessarily, and shouldn't be, an expert witness. Are you able to provide those sorts of things to your clients as well?
Well, we really have to. We've got certain constitutional mandates out there, and one of those is in Ake versus Oklahoma. I was a district judge in that case. That's the Douglas case where...
Well, that's AKE versus Oklahoma. Yeah.
Right. And what happened in that case, that there was an insanity defense. They wanted a private psychiatrist. At that time, the court fund did not allow me to expend monies to pay for defense experts. That went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. They said in order to put on have a constitutionally adequate defense, that if that's the issue and the state provides their expert, says this person is not insane or they are competent, the defendant must have the same right, has the same rights. So we have to provide those in order to ensure that if this person's guilty and they're convicted, that it's upheld. Constitutionally, if it's constitutionally infirm, we go through this, and we have to end up doing it again, which was what was happening 5 years ago a lot when I got at the Indigent Defense System. So that's been a big issue.
Let me ask you this: we people who don't have a lot to do with the criminal justice system hear about plea bargaining all the time.
Right.
I assume that your lawyers engage in appropriate plea bargaining for their clients when that is appropriate.
Absolutely, and you know, people think, well, if you just plea bargain them, you don't need an investigator or stuff like that. But very often, we think they're overcharged. They're not charged with the proper crime.
By overcharged, you mean charged with a more serious crime than they
more
should be?
serious crime than the facts warrant. So we have to go out and investigate that and come back and convince the DA that we need a lesser reduced charge, a lesser charge, and then we can plead this thing if we get what we think is appropriate charge and appropriate punishment for the crime. So plea bargaining is not just like we roll over. Sometimes we work harder on those cases, and we often have a capital case and where we go do our homework and come back and the bill is dropped so that they're not seeking the death penalty after we've done our work. Mm-hmm. And we're able to negotiate a plea very often in those cases.
Do you have any sense of how many of your cases are resolved by pleas and how many are actually
I would
tried?
say I would say a good 90% of them. And you know, we're talking about most of the time that there has been a crime committed. And so we're just, the real process is determining what charge and what punishment is appropriate for the crime that has been committed.
About 1 minute left.
Well, in the minute we have, let's take it past the trial. Let's assume the trial has happened and it was an unfavorable verdict for the defendant. Is your office involved in handling the appeal?
That's correct. We do most of the criminal appeals in Oklahoma. We handle about 3,000 of those a year. 100 of them are probably in capital cases where the death penalty has been imposed, either at the capital direct appeal level or the post-conviction level, and then the rest of them are non-capital where they have not gotten the death penalty, but they've gotten some other sentence. So,
will it be the same lawyer or a different lawyer?
Be different lawyer, because the trial lawyers are out there. We've contracted with those. We do have some trial offices out there where they provide that service, but we have a set of capital appellate lawyers and then non-capital appellate lawyers who handle those cases.
Mr. Bednar, we appreciate you coming by this week.
Very glad
Next
to be
week,
here.
I want to ask you how Hollywood's portrayal of what you do and what other people who are associated with what you do affects how the general public feels about you guys and how you do your job.
I'll be glad to respond to that.
That'll be
Thanks,
next week
Jim.
on The Verdict. Kent and I'll be right back after this.
We are so pleased to congratulate Crow and Dunleavy for their support of the arts and culture in our community and the whole state of Oklahoma. Particularly, we are pleased that they have given us the opportunity to promote the Arts Power campaign on the television show so that we may bring art and music teachers back to our elementary schools all over the state of Oklahoma. Happy anniversary, Crow Dunleavy. We are proud of you.
Think being a big brother means taking time out of your schedule to tutor a kid in algebra? Think again. To learn more about becoming a big brother or big sister, call 1-888-412-BIGS.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an Allied artist.
American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311. We are C.H. Guernsey & Company. We provide engineering, architecture, and consulting services to clients across the nation and around the world. Our corporate headquarters are located in Oklahoma City, and we have branch offices across the country, including Tulsa. We have provided quality service to clients for nearly 75 years. At Guernsey, we believe in quality work and unconditional client satisfaction. To learn more about C.H. Guernsey & Company, log on to our website at chguernsey.com.
We're back, and we're wrapping up another edition of The Verdict.
Well, today we had Jim Bednar with us, and we're going to have him back next week. And we really tried to lay the groundwork today for how the criminal law system interacts with the poor or indigent defendant. And certainly the indigent defendant is absolutely constitutionally entitled to an adequate defense. It is by no means a dream team defense in the context of recent criminal cases that we've heard about, but it is certainly in Oklahoma well carried out, well administered, well run by Jim Bednar and his largest law firm in the state. I think some of our viewers might be shocked to know that he has 38,000 cases at any one time, which is a huge load, even with that many lawyers. I just don't see how he gets it done, but we're going to find out a little bit more about it next week, and because we're going to invite him back for a second segment.
And invite our viewers to check out our website, theverdict.tv. Thanks again to our guest, Jim Bednar. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.